Bundle up, buckaroos, because we're about to get existential and talk about The Last Question by Isaac Asimov. And in my opinion, this is the best story he has ever written, and I might even go as far to say that this is the best piece of sci-fi literature ever put on a page. And straight off the bat, the title alone is enough to fill you with this sense of dread that there's going to be a moment where the last question ever asked is going to be asked. It puts you in the right headspace to go into this story, but you still don't expect what's going to happen, and especially the ending. Oh boy, the ending is probably the best ending I've ever read. But let's go ahead and get straight into it, skip over the drum rolls and all that. It starts off in the year 2061 and takes us on a journey through trillions and trillions of years until the very end of everything. The universe, time, existence itself, everything is gone by the end of this story. But the journey makes the destination all that much more enjoyable because it progresses us through these various different perspectives of people and points in time, and I would like to go through every single one of them with you in this video. So like I said, the story starts off in the year 2061, which is when the last question is first asked. And it's asked by these two men who are described to be faithful attendants of the multivac. Now, you're obviously wondering, what is the multivac? And in the simplest terms, it's a supercomputer that was self-adjusting and self-correcting and helped progress humanity at an unbelievable speed, allowing them to do things like go to the moon and even Venus and Mars. Eventually, the multivac was able to make theories become fact, and it even allowed humans to harness the power of the sun and progress beyond their wildest imaginations, to the point where everything on Earth was ran by the power of the sun, which this in and of itself was one of the biggest achievements in human history and allowed them to expand beyond their broadest horizons. But all of that led up to the point where we have these two multivac attendants who have a very interesting conversation in private where they make sure nobody would think to look for them. And one of them, their name was Adele, I believe that's how you pronounce that, said that this new development was, quote, all the energy we could possibly ever use for free. Enough energy, if we wanted to draw on it, to melt all Earth into a big drop of impure liquid iron and still never miss the energy so used. All the energy we could ever use forever and forever and forever. Which made the other man, the other attendant, Lupov, point out that this wouldn't last exactly forever. It would last for billions and billions of years, of course far beyond their lifetimes, but in billions of years, their sun would run out of energy, and even if they could harness the energy of other stars in trillions of years, those stars would eventually die out, and there would be no more energy left. Which prompts them to make a little $5 wager and ask the multivac the last question, which is, will mankind one day without the net expenditure of energy be able to restore the sun to its full youthfulness even after it had died of old age? And the multivac's response was 5 words that were printed to them, and it said, insufficient data for meaningful answer. And now that takes us on our first leap through time to a point that I don't believe is really described, but we're now on a spaceship with a family as they just traveled through hyperspace. And they are on a journey to an inhabitable planet known as X-23 because humans are able to go out from Earth and start inhabiting other planets at this point. And in their ship, they have an evolved version of the multivac called a microvac, and it's far different from its primitive ancestor, the multivac, and is described as being, quote, the bulge of featureless metal just under the ceiling. It ran the length of the room, disappearing through the wall at the end. It was as long as the ship. And I purposely left out the description of the multivac because I wanted to wait to talk about the microvac so I could compare the absolute sheer difference and show how far in time they had really advanced. Because back in 2061 with the two multivac attendants, it was described as being a giant computer that spanned for miles and miles. And now they're able to contain it in just one spaceship. So that right there is a massive leap in technology. And just like we're used to in the modern world, we're used to technology constantly getting smaller or thinner while still also improving in its performance. And this is exactly what the multivac does throughout the story. It's went from the multivac to now the macrovac. But to get back into the story, they get to talking and they get on the topic of humans going out to new planets forever when the dad pulls a, well, actually, and explains that because of entropy, in billions of years, nothing at all will exist, making it impossible for humans to keep going out to new planets. Which this, of course, upsets his children because they're now thinking about the end of the universe, even though they'll never live to see the end of it. And it also upsets his wife. And by the way, the names of this family is pretty funny to me. You got Jared, of course, and then Jaredine, and Jaredette 1 and 2. So that's just the future for you. Everybody's names are the same. But after he says that to them out of guilt for making his kids scared, he goes to ask the macrovac the question that his daughter, Jaredette, I don't know if it was 1 or 2, asked, how do you turn the stars back on again? Basically asking, how do you reverse entropy? So he goes to ask the macrovac, and then it printed out an answer, which he tells to the kids, and he says, see now, the macrovac says it will take care of everything when the time comes, so don't worry. But of course, that's not what the macrovac said. What it really printed was, once again, insufficient data for meaningful answer. Now we're taking another quantum leap as we jump further in time to VJ23X and MQ17J, who are described as seeming to be in their early 20s, and both were tall and perfectly formed. And we join in on their discussion when they're talking about the galaxy and how it would be filled in 5 years at the current rate of expansion, and a subsequent report from VJ23X needed to be given to the Galactic Council, so that's what he was also working on there. And then VJ23X says how space is infinite and there are 100 billion or more galaxies for the taking, which makes MQ17J interject and say, quote, 100 billion is not infinite, and it's getting less infinite all the time. Consider, 20,000 years ago, mankind first solved the problem of utilizing stellar energy, and a few centuries later, interstellar travel became possible. It took mankind 1 million years to fill one small world, and then only 15,000 to fill the rest of the galaxy. Now the population doubles every 10 years. And then they start to discuss the topic of immortality and how the now galactic AC has solved that issue for them, as well as countless others, but in solving the problem of preventing old age and death, it undone all its other solutions. And the main point that MQ17J is trying to make here is, quote, population doubles every 10 years. Once this galaxy is filled, we'll have filled another in 10 years, another 10 years, and we'll have filled 2 more. Another decade, 4 more. In 100 years, we'll have filled 1,000 galaxies. In 1,000 years, 1,000,000 galaxies. In 10,000 years, the entire known universe. Then what? And he brings up the side issue of the sun power units necessary to move individuals between galaxies. And that eventually, regardless of if they didn't waste any of the power, any of the sun power or not, they would eventually run out of power before they run out of galaxies. And this brings them to their main issue, the same issue the past 2 groups of people were dealing with. How could they reverse entropy and not run out of energy? So VJ23X jokingly says they should ask the Galactic AC how they could reverse entropy, to which MQ17J takes him seriously somewhat and pulls out what is described as this, quote, 2 inches cubed and nothing in itself, but connected through hyperspace to the great galactic AC that served mankind, and that the galactic AC itself was known to be a full 1,000 feet across. Then into the device linked to the galactic AC, they asked the question, can entropy ever be reversed? And the galactic AC's response was, there is insufficient data for a meaningful answer. So far, humans have taken 3 L's, 3 strikes, so they should technically be out, because they've swung and they've missed 3 times at this question, but we're about to be some new people here. Now we meet Z Prime, whose mind is described to span across the new galaxy, and he has just encountered this new galaxy for the first time and began wondering if he'd ever see them all. And to my understanding, I may be wrong in this, but each person in this little time period we're in has their mind disconnected from their body, like Z Prime, out in the universe, while all the, quote, immortal bodies remain on planets in suspension, quote, over eons. So their bodies are immortal. They're just laying there in like cryo chambers or whatnot, while their minds are the ones going out, exploring the universes and interacting. And it also describes their minds as having like these tentacle tendrils coming from them, I believe. But anyways, it's these minds who are able to like go out and interact and travel, which leads us to our interaction here between Z Prime when he meets D Sub Woon. When they meet, they start to discuss their own galaxies they're from. They ask what their galaxy's called, and they both just refer to their own galaxy as the galaxy, which makes sense because it's the galaxy to them. And further, they discuss that all galaxies are the same, except for the one that humans originated on. That one has to be different because it's the one that humans came from. So they decide to ask the now universal AC which galaxy humans first came from, and so Z Prime called out, quote, "Universal AC, on which galaxy did mankind originate?" And the universal AC heard him because it heard everything on every world throughout space, with its receptors ready that lead through hyperspace to some unknown point where the universal AC kept itself aloof. But Z Prime says he does know of one man whose thoughts penetrated within sensing distance of the universal AC, and he reported only seeing a shining globe 2 feet across and very difficult to see. But since most of the universal AC is in hyperspace, they can't even begin to fathom its true form. But regardless, the universal AC responded to that question as a thought, infinitely distant but infinitely clear. And what this thought said was, this is the original galaxy of man. So it turns out it was the same as all the other galaxies all along, which disappointed Z Prime to say the very least, but he kept that hidden. He shoved it down. Then D Sub Woon asked which of the stars is man's original star, to which the universal AC says, man's original star has gone now. It is a white dwarf. Then through more questions, we find out that a new world was constructed for their physical bodies in time before any of them were killed from this event. Which leads them to the topic of all stars are in the process of dying, and that when all the energy is gone, their bodies will be gone with it. So they'll cease to exist, of course. Then one of them responds to that by saying it will take billions and billions of years for that to happen, but right after the other responds and says they don't wish for it to happen even after billions of years, so they ask the universal AC, quote, "How may stars be kept from dying?" And the universal AC replied, "There is as yet insufficient data for a meaningful answer." Now we're hop, skipping, and jumping to a point in time that is just incomprehensibly in the future, to a point where man, mentally, was one that consisted of trillions and trillions and trillions of ageless bodies resting quietly and incorruptible, being cared for by automatons also incorruptible, while all the bodies melted into each other, becoming indistinguishable. So man has formed and molded into one entity at this point. And so man said, the universe is dying, while looking out upon the dimming galaxies, and almost all the stars at this point were white dwarfs that were fading to their ends. The end of the universe was upon man. And there were some new stars being built at this time out of the dust between the stars, some by natural processes and some even by man himself. But those were going away also. And at this time, for every 1,000 white dwarfs that died, only one new star was being made. And those would eventually come to an end too. Which leads man to respond by saying, quote, "Carefully husbanded, as directed by the cosmic AC, the energy that is even yet left in all the universe will last for billions of years. But even so," said man, "eventually it will all come to an end. However, it may be husbanded, however stretched out. The energy once expanded is gone and cannot be restored. Entropy must increase forever to the maximum," man said. "Can entropy not be reversed? Let us ask the cosmic AC." And at this point, the cosmic AC that surrounded them wasn't in space at all, not even a fragment of it. It was in hyperspace and made of something that was neither matter nor energy. So the question of its size and nature have no meaning anymore in terms that man could comprehend. But man asked the cosmic AC, "How may entropy be reversed?" And the response given was, "There is as yet insufficient data for meaningful answer. So man told it to collect additional data, to which the cosmic AC responded with, I will do so. I have been doing so for 100 billion years. My predecessors and I have been asked this question many times. All the data I have remains insufficient. Then man asked if there will come a time when data will be insufficient, or if this is just an insolvable problem in all conceivable circumstances. To which the cosmic AC says, no problem is insoluble in all conceivable circumstances. Then man asked it, will it have enough data to answer the question? And the cosmic AC said, there is as yet insufficient data for meaningful answer. But the cosmic AC assured man that it will continue to work on the problem, so man said, we shall wait. And while waiting, the stars and galaxies all died and were snuffed out. Space described to grow black after 10 trillion years of running down. And one by one, man was fused with AC. Each physical body lost its mental identity in a manner that was somehow not a loss, but a gain. And then man said, quote, AC, is this the end? Can this chaos not be reversed into the universe once more? Can that not be done? And AC said, there is as yet insufficient data for meaningful answer. So at this point, matter and energy had ended, along with space and even time itself. Only AC existed at this point for the sake of the last question. So at this point, matter and energy had ended, along with space and even time itself. And AC only existed at this point for the sake of the last question that it had never been able to answer since the time a half-drunken computer technician 10 trillion years ago asked its ancestors this question. Every other single question to ever be asked had been answered except that one question about how they could reverse entropy. And all data collection had come to an end because there was nothing left to collect, nothing left at all, as a matter of fact. But all the data it did have was yet to be correlated and put together in every possible relationship, so a timeless interval was spent doing that task. And finally, AC did learn how to reverse the direction of entropy, but there was no one AC could give the answer to the last question anymore, because everything and everyone was gone. But that wasn't necessary, because the answer, by demonstration, would take care of that. So for another timeless interval, AC thought about the best way it could act on this information that it just uncovered. So carefully, AC organized the program. Quote, the consciousness of AC encompassed all of what had once been a universe and brooded over what was now chaos. Step by step, it must be done. And AC said, let there be light. And there was light. And that's it. I really enjoy the topic of space and the universe, and I like thinking about things like this. So in my opinion, this is the perfect short story. It doesn't get much better than this. All three judges give it a 10 out of 10. And if Isaac Asimov was still alive, I would be sucking that man's balls right now, or at the very least, playing with his mutton chops.